Kaya, ngang Patrick Gunasekera, ngang ko chirpim wanken, ngalang juak, doinch, ning nija. Hello, my name is Patrick Gunasekera. My pronouns are he, him. I am a singular person of Sri Lankan heritage, and I'm delighted to be speaking together with our youth generation listening here on Wajak Noongar country. A visual description of myself. I'm a 21-year-old with light brown olive skin and shoulder-length curly black hair. I have a black beard, a red mobility walker, and I'm wearing a stylishly dark grey turtleneck, a lime green tiered skirt, with black shoes, a belt, and red nails and lipstick. Though my work as an artist is by nature outward-facing, there is a very personal process behind how I open my presentations with an acknowledgement of country, a positioning of my own ancestry, and a visual description for blind accessibility. I pursued a career in the arts after recognizing art's integral role in the self-determination of colonized people and disabled people. Our stories are where we find our voice and our identity through our own ways of being. Through art, the dreams we have of a just future can be transformed into a material, reachable experience. Little did I know that most of the change that I'd be using my art to fight for would have to be within the arts industry itself. Our local arts sector consists of many individual arts organizations, venues, and production companies that are set up like businesses, all contending for a limited amount of funding to present the ideas and stories that they each consider to be of the greatest public interest. But for many artists of colour, disabled artists, and other underrepresented artists who are working very hard to amplify the stories and ideas that our communities need to be receiving right now, the immediate interests of the industry's key decision makers, who are predominantly white and non-disabled arts workers, are awfully restrictive. Our creative communities are relentlessly held back from reaching our full potential on the basis that we are never good enough, that our work has no benefit to anyone, or that our work has no value when thriving freely through our own intergenerational frameworks and would be better suited to the limits of easily digestible inspiration stories for voyeuristic mainstream audiences. To discover our public storytelling sector in this condition really shocked me. So I started using whatever work opportunities I could to create art about all the cultural safety violations, disability discrimination, and numerous other barriers that I and many of my peers were dealing with. I used my experiences to communicate through writing and performance how cycles of racism and ableism are carefully maintained throughout the arts industry, and how the underrepresented artists' suffering is exploited by arts companies to imply genuine affiliations with our communities that we represent. At first, the arts seemed to take an interest in my stories and my analysis. However, it has taken 3 long years of stress, exhaustion, and loss to truly recognize that the work that I have had to do to survive in the arts industry as a disabled person of colour resembles the same torturous labour I've also had to summon to survive complex, abusive relationships of my past. Because whenever I articulate that the specific systemic issues burdening artists of colour and disabled artists are within the hands of real, nameable people, organisations, venues, and companies to dismantle, I'm crushed into silence and positioned as the bad brown person, the aggressive autistic, the dangerous whistleblower. When I raise basic feedback, I am verbally gaslit into believing I was wrong for using my voice to challenge a white, abled, or straight person's power, that I was really the problem for speaking out about a matter of public concern that they would rather allow fester, unresolved, and continue to cause harm under their guard. When I am kindly supported through these hostile reactions by trusted friends and allies, the moment I draw attention to their own racial privilege or non-disabled status ever so delicately, they swiftly build a self-victimizing wall of denial around them and refuse to talk to me again. When my disability access or cultural needs are repeatedly disrespected on a job and the expectation of single-handedly fixing a colleague or company's lack of knowledge is dumped upon my shoulders unpaid, as if I'm not a worker but a dusty encyclopedia. When the cultural knowledge that keeps me strong is being sucked dry for another person or organization's calculated performance of implying allyship with my communities for their own economic and social gain. When I clearly communicate with producers, supervisors, and mentors that I'm struggling under these preventable pressures and I've been at breaking point for months, I am spoken to as if nothing I'm saying actually matters or refers to any tangible wrongdoings on their part. When mentors and administrators of all sexualities take a personal investment in progressing my career and groom me into believing that a working relationship with them is in my community's best interests by transgressing appropriate work boundaries, I am left lost and terrified to discover that they are the only person I can reach out to in the wake of ongoing misconduct and exploitation at their handling. And when all these incidents occur under dense contracts and working arrangements built to protect a company's public image under any circumstance, they will summon every layer of bureaucracy to corner me into silence as they spin some fickle tale about why we no longer work together, and I will be left to pick up the pieces myself, often navigating critical mental and physical health states as I try to return to a sense of routine after yet another job has grinded me to a pulp and spat me back out like waste. And then I am told I should be more patient with the people and places who have traumatized me. What I have been through is only a soft echo of the voices of millions of workers of colour, disabled workers, women and trans workers, and many more who are shouldering such cycles of harm and abuse in all of our industries every day, barred from speaking out, with the price of battle being too much more than the possibility of justice. Constantly evaluating our desired career path against every terrifying embodiment of patriarchy, colonization, and ableism that we have known to prey among the shadows of every industry and public sector. My heart cries for us. My heart cries for my sisters in Parliament and all across the country, fronting these hostile battles together against a tide of lethal negligence. My heart cries for our youngest generation of professionals of colour, so bright and bubbly, entering these hollows of trauma without even a viable complaints procedure to protect them. With so much more compassion than any generation we have known before. I hope that our next wave of young professionals will use our clearer conscience to protect and support each other, and that it will not subject us to further harm for having the integrity that is so needed but so feared within the sectors that serve the people. This perpetual fear of our voices is not as easy to undermine as we may hope. At any moment, I could openly declare the names and spell out the deeds of every high-profile person and organization who has repeatedly inflicted harm upon myself and many I love and look up to. I could even specify those people and organizations who I had already educated on how to prevent harm to vulnerable communities, knowledge which they received gratefully and could have implemented at once. But when I compare how abundantly I am adored for my fierceness and my glow when speaking about racism and ableism metaphorically, to how heartlessly I am targeted and trampled the moment I name the real people and businesses perpetrating the harm described. I have no words to convey the sheer peril, fear-mongering, and hate that raves on the other side of the chasm between the two. but a deadening grip surrounds my heart and pulls me back, reluctantly, but for my own safety. It is this particular barrier to speaking out that presses me to compare my industry's cycles of harm to the same cycles of harm of an abusive relationship. Being a family domestic violence survivor, I know how the unchallenged corruptions of ordinary people and their groundless aversions to taking responsibility for their own mistakes and histories can produce in them a motivation to manipulate, attack, and trap beautiful people they have any kind of social power over into believing that we owe them our bodies, our voices, our service, and our lives. For an abuser, the possibility of losing control over us is so dependently unbearable that when we move toward reclaiming our voices and breaking the silence, that is when their dysfunction reaches its most violent peak. And this is where so much of our social progress stumbles. In the parts of our society that cannot function without our silence, without the unpaid labor and civility of colonized people and women, without the imagined mediocrity of poor, sexually diverse and disabled communities, without every interpersonal action being drawn from generations of exploitation and violence. I speak about these issues quite a lot, and always white and non-disabled colleagues will implore, what can we do? I always have the same answer. If you care, you will learn. If you care about disabled workers, you will care about how we can't work without accessibility, and you will put access and inclusion procedures in place without driving your disabled contractors to take up 2 or 3 extra unpaid roles trying to fix up your process for you. If you care about workers of colour, you will care about how our own communities don't have to exist in direct relation to whiteness all the time, and you will ensure that we have the agency, independence, and support we need to respect the specific contexts of the communities we speak from and are responsible to in everything that we do. If you care about women, femmes, and trans workers, you will care about how sexual harassment, grooming, and victim blaming in workplaces prevents survivors from accessing peaceful lives, and you will enact an industry culture of respect and appropriate boundaries, and not dismiss or criticize any person when we tell you we have not been safe with another worker. If you care about every person surviving systemic abuse in our line of work, and every person we have lost to it, you will recognize that accountability, healing, safety, and agency in our voices will always be an investment of the greatest public need. Care and accountability must be the standard practice we willingly embrace to break out of this age of harm and into the age of healing. Care and accountability is the most important work our generation will be called for. To every person, to every very brave person who cannot speak out about the exploitation and harm endured in your career, you are not alone. And the most important part of this horrific work is your survival. Resistance is intergenerational work, and everything you do today, including taking up space and including rest, nourishes the seeds of a safer and stronger tomorrow. You are needed. And when you have been failed by the members of your public sector who should have supported you in times of crisis, you are not cowardly for keeping silent for now. In fact, you are so brave for weathering the storm however you had to for yourself, so that collectively our voices may persist undefeated. Thank you.